Hello, this is Trent. I am Bumi Obano. And as always, Moses Omogana, the digital producer, is right here with me. What's trending?
Hello.
I should change that, shouldn't I?
What's trending?
It's like my signature entrance, but maybe I should just tweak it up a little.
You just said, what's up?
What's up, right? So what's trending?
Yep. The hashtag Ebola, again, is still ongoing. But there seems to be, some wave of good news so far. People are now more aware of the disease. People are now, and having very precautionary, measures towards it. Everybody has, a product of a hand sanitizer, hand gloves. People are now, very protective socially. And now we got good news earlier on today. Ken Brantley, and the American aid worker that was flown from Liberia to the U.S., who had the Ebola virus, has been discharged from the hospital. And that is a wave of hope to everyone, to all Africans, and to those who, what are you itching there? To those who, who are hoping for the ZMapp cure. This, of course, is the very first verified and authentic cure of the ZMapp. So, Ken Brantley made his press conference at the Emory University Teaching Hospital today, but we did not know the health condition of his colleague, Nancy Wilbrod. Now, apart from that, still speaking of the Ebola, we have a hero in our time who we lost on Tuesday, Dr. Stella Amadevon. She died. She was the doctor who actually treated Patrick Sawyer before he died. Now, what makes her so legendary was, apart from the fact that she carried out her job diligently and professionally, while treating Dr. Patrick Sawyer, she was under pressure to release Patrick Sawyer because he had a summit or a meeting in Calabar in the south of Nigeria, but she refused. Why? Because she understood how contagious that disease, is. And you can imagine if she had given into pressure, a whole lot of people, in fact, the Ebola virus spread would have been uncontrollably, disastrous as we speak now. But she withstood pressure, and she insisted that Patrick Sawyer should not go anywhere until he's been, show signs of recovery. And unfortunately, while doing that, carrying out her profession, she contracted the virus and she died on Tuesday. According to Lagos State government, she deserves a posthumous award, and everyone has been writing tributes to her, and African nations have been posting tweets, messages to her families and stuff like that. So that's what's going on for Ebola. Now, moving on, we have another one, a tragic story to hashtag Ferguson, which of course mounted from hashtag Mike Brown. Now, on the 9th of August, a very tragic night at Ferguson Street, Missouri, a young boy, teenager, who was killed, shot by a police officer, Wilson. He was asked to, well, according to our report, he was asked to leave the road and move on to the pedestrian walk. But, Michael Brown was said to be, he was said to be bullheaded of the police instruction. And we know that there was a struggle because the police officer was taken to the hospital with, a fracture in his face and his jaw. So we know for a fact that there was a struggle with Mike Brown, but we do not know who pulled the trigger because Mike Brown was said to be shot twice in the head and 6 times in front, although his friend Dorian says he was shot from the back. So that contradicts it. Now, one of the contradictions of the story was that Mike Brown was said that his hands were up while he was being shot, but the police officer said Michael Brown was a threat to him. I mean, in police terms, when someone's hands are up, it's difficult for that person to be a threat, especially when the police ask you to freeze. It shows surrender, exactly. Yeah. So that, of course, has sparked a lot of, racial controversy. That, I mean, people are now trying to send some level of hate, in the interrogation.
Bearing in mind, the police officer was white. Was
white, and the guy was black. Remember, in 2012, the same case happened with a guy named Treyon, who was shot, and the police officer was allowed to go scot-free. So we're hoping that justice, in its true sense, happens this time around because the jury are working on the case, and that's it. And of course, don't forget to join the conversation by sending us your tweets at TVC Trends, email at tvctrends.tv, or you can go to our Facebook at facebook.com/TVCTrends and join the conversation, sending your pictures, your tweets, email, and so much more. We'll be, of course, willing to hear from you as always.
as always.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, we have over 200 million youth aged between 15 and 24 years in Africa alone, and that makes it the youngest population in the world. Economically, this figure should translate to a great workforce for the continent and make industrialization and manufacturing its birthright. While 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa, it is shocking that the continent seems to be worst hit by youth unemployment in the world. According to the World Bank, youth account for 60% of all unemployed Africans. There are attractive youth empowerment policies in Africa, actually, but the will and sincerity of governments to follow them through is scarce. The effect of this is a population of poorly educated young people that lack the opportunity and motivation to assume leadership in their spaces. Well, today on the program, we look at the African youth and leadership. How long more will the continent deny its youth the opportunities needed for leadership? Before we start the conversation, take a look at this.
The group says the aim of this program is to turn youths into valuable assets in their communities so that they can stop depending much on their parents and guardians, but instead help in eradicating poverty in Zimbabwe and Africa. Under this program, youths in both urban and rural Zimbabwe are tasked to identify main problems facing their communities and then taught to deal with them.
We realize that a lot of communities view young people as maybe an unnecessary headache. There's a lot of negative views, particularly coming from a patriarchal society. So what we have said is we believe that young people can be an important resource in community development, given first of all their numbers, given their energy, and generally their enthusiasm for life.
The youths are also taught on how to embark on income-generating projects in their communities.
Many times, many youth complain about unemployment, but if you gain leadership skills, you can be able to start up your own business. You can also be able to begin living an influential life in your community as well, create development in your community.
Yeah. Coming from a background that is from what people would term as ghetto, and as a young woman, I think it takes a boldness for one to stand and be a leader. And so that's the benefit that I've been given from Incha.com, that I am now bold, I'm confident, and I can actually advocate for young people's rights.
About 65% of Zimbabwean youths are currently said to suffer from mental problems because of drug and alcohol abuse. This is according to local researchers. Due to the economic meltdown faced by Zimbabwe in the past recent years, several Zimbabwe youths have remained jobless soon after school or college. Meanwhile, thousands of them have been flocking to neighboring countries such as Botswana, South Africa and Namibia in search of jobs in mines, bars and restaurants. The Zimbabwe government recently set up a 10 million youth development fund as capital for unemployed youths to start their own businesses, but the program was halted as the rate of default by youths had reached an alarming level of 78%. Lack of leadership and business management skills were cited as the main reasons for the high default rate, as most youths were allocated funds without having undergone any capacity building programs.
Okay, now that was one of the reports that, followed through with the International Youth Day that was just held on the 12th of August. Now, we have in the studio with us, we're not alone, we have Bankole Williams, he's a certified life coach, and via Skype, we have Grant Davids, he's the Executive Director of the Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development in Africa. It's very good to have both of you join us, gentlemen. Thanks for being a part of the program.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so we just watched that, and really, that was just to set the tone for the discussion, because we're talking about young people in Africa and the role they play and the role they should be playing and the role that they can or play. That's kind of the same thing actually. Okay, so let me start with you, Bankole. Right now in Africa, how involved is the average young person in issues of leadership and social development?
Well, I would first of all start by saying, well, we've made some degree of progress. Once upon a time, you know, we didn't really have a voice. But one thing I must recognize is that there's a whole lot that we can do that we're not doing, right? Particularly when you look at the statistics. You know, looking at a place like Nigeria, you know, they've actually found out that the average age is almost 19 years, right? So we are, the population, the majority of the population is made up of young people, and there's a whole lot that we can do that we're not doing. There's a whole lot we can contribute towards the development of, you know, Africa, that, you know, the youth, you know, are not doing. But that's not to discredit the fact that, you know, some people are doing some things that are really, you know, incredible. So I would say we are not where we should be, but the truth is we've made some significant progress compared, you know, to how Africa was, you know, several years ago. Now we're hearing of young people set up business enterprises, right? We're hearing of young people become, you know, CEOs of organizations that are changing, you know, the state of things in Africa, and not just in Africa, you know, but also on a global stage. So I think we've made some progress, you know, in comparison with, you know, decades that we've experienced in the past, right? But I know that there's a lot of potential we possess, and we're not yet there. I think the government should also, you know, try to focus on the youth and youth empowerment and youth development. And I think that would also help us get to...
You know, like you just mentioned, and earlier I quoted out figures that supports that young people make up, out of 1 billion people we have, you know, on the continent, Africa, we have 200 million between the ages of 15 to 24. That's about 20% of the population.
That's 200 million.
That is a lot. So I want Grant to also let me in on what he thinks. Bankole has told us, well, we're not there yet, but it's better than where it used to be in terms of involvement. Grant, what do you think? How involved are average African young people in, you know, leadership?
Nation building.
Grant, how involved is the average young person in today's average young person in the context of leadership and social development? All right. We'll try to get Grant's path.
I hope we establish that connection. Now, the World International Youth Day was on the 12th of August, and the theme of, you know, this year's Youth Day says youth and mental health, creating awareness that mentally challenged youths do have a lot to offer. Now, let me ask this from the point of view of an entrepreneur or a stakeholder. Now, when a person, however youthful or not, is mentally challenged or unfit, at what point, how effective do you think that person can deliver? Because, I mean, bearing that in mind as an entrepreneur, where do we now draw the line between discrimination and just being realistically fair? That these people really can't deliver, you know, in the society. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that mental health is something you can't play with. The truth is productivity is hinged on your mind, you know, and how your mind works, right? The truth is there are certain people who are born with certain challenges, and the truth is we need to encourage them, right? So it's the way our society is structured. There's like a stigma that's attached to people who have certain challenges like that, and you really don't want them to have a poor self-esteem and things like that, you know. So I know that there are a few organizations that make, you know, they have room for people like that, physically challenged people and people, you know, struggle mentally, so to speak, right? But everybody's looking at performance. Everybody wants, you know,
fast-paced
world that we find ourselves
today.
Yes, people want you to deliver, you know. So more often than not, a lot of people are biased towards such people. It's normal, you know. Organizations feel like, you know, you can't perform, so that's why you have things like medical tests before, you know, they hire you. So they check things like that, and if they think you have a mental challenge, they tell you to take time off work, right? So
okay, but still in line with being able to deliver, there are also certain qualities that people seem to attach to being young. For example, you are reckless, you are, you know,
undecisive.
Yeah, you know, you are rude, you know, you're still at that stage where you're
immature.
Exactly. And sometimes young people do display
those traits.
Yeah, those traits.
Yeah.
And this can hinder them.
Oh, definitely.
So how does that, what exactly, what, is that just, are people just stereotyping young
It's
people?
a huge stigma,
you know, or
for
is it,
young people,
do we,
yeah, really.
are there facts to that?
Well, the truth is, you know, there are different stages of life. And we must be able to understand the stage of life somebody is in and the traits of people in that stage of life. The adults that we have today, they pass through the teenage stage of life. You know, and when you have a teenager, you know, or a young person who has so much energy and tends to be, you know, passionate and exudes all of that, you must recognize that you did the same thing too when you were there. And sometimes these things that we call a challenge can actually be a strength, right? The issue is being able to channel that energy into something productive. So some people who, you know, cannot stay in one place at one time, they might just make effective marketers, for instance. So it's looking for that person's strength in the phase of life that they are in and being able to ensure that they are productive with whatever strength you've identified in that phase of life. So I know we discriminate against the young people, but that energy can also be converted into productivity.
All right.
Okay.
Thankfully, we have Grant. Let me bring him in. Grant, if you can hear me, how would you describe the African youth, you know, in the context of leadership and social involvement?
Thank you very much. Well, with the context of youth involvement in leadership and development, one of the things that we've kind of working with young people on the continent is that young people want to be able to make a contribution on this continent. But the problem is young people just aren't given the necessary opportunities to be able to engage in decision-making process. So, and I think one of the things that we've kind of noted is that young people suffer from an image issue. And this is basically in terms of, you know, African young people are perceived as the source of, you know, many of societal problems that affect the continent. And so one of the biggest challenges is getting that image to be changed and reversed, to showcase what young people are doing. Because young people are doing a lot of stuff, and young people really want to engage and get involved. This I've seen firsthand. It's about creating the opportunity to allow them to do that.
We can't hear him.
The studio is mum. We can't hear him. We can't hear him.
Okay. Grant, many of Africa's past and present leaders were already at the vanguard of social transformation, you know, and perhaps emancipation of their societies in their early 30s, even 20s actually. But the opportunities today seem to be shrinking. What issues do you think, what issues are there to be addressed really? So what's the cause of this?
What issues need to be addressed?
Okay, let me take the question again. Grant, many of Africa's past leaders and even present leaders were very involved in social transformation at their very early stage of life, so in their 20s and 30s. But today, the opportunities to do that seem to be shrinking. I would like to know why.
So I think the opportunities are actually increasing. I mean, one of our success stories is the fact that young people can stand up and protest when they're not happy with things going on. Very good example of what happened during the Arab Spring. It was young people using what they know best, social media, to create a movement of change. And we saw in that case that young people demanded from their government reaction and responsiveness, and they gave it to them. So
We can't hear him.
young people don't have the opportunities. I think our opportunities have actually become smarter. Young people have been able to do what they use every day to interact with one another, to create meaningful change on this continent. I think it's about inspiring those young people who are located in areas that may not necessarily have those facilities to engage them in a different way.
Okay. Bankole, I would like to address the same question to you, but let me also add this now. According to the International Labour Organization, between year 2000 and 2008, this is a bit backdated, but they like to do these reports in a long stretch of time. In Africa, about 73 million jobs were created, and out of that, only 16 million jobs were made tailored to, suit or accommodate young people. Now, earlier I was asking grants why the opportunities are shrinking. And this just proves that there are less opportunities for young people to be out there and take control of the society. Why? Why is this happening?
Well, honestly, I must say that I think, that the way our systems are structured, we have not empowered young people with the necessary skills for the opportunities that exist, right? And there's a huge skill gap, right? In certain parts of the world, some of these skills, there are vacancies for them, but they are now outsourced to expatriates and things like that. So there are huge skill gaps. We have a society, particularly in certain parts of Africa, where we teach people to be employed, right? So we have an employment-based system. So people go to school and they study courses that are not relevant, to what they would practice in the future. So people study courses that they're not even interested in, and they know that when they come out of school, they're not going to practice them. So the educational system plays a significant role, in the outcomes that we have in society. So when people come out, they have been empowered, or they have been taught something that they are never going to practice, or they've been taught a course that there are not even opportunities for, So there are those vacancies, but we don't even have the requisite skills within, that age bracket to be able to acquire such skills. So it possibly takes people an amount of time to get to that point when they can, fill those gaps. So there are disparities that need to be fixed, particularly starting with the educational system, focusing on the young people, recognizing that we need to empower them for the opportunities that exist in their future.
Quite a number of people will agree with you because, they're saying even though the opportunities are there, the young people, unfortunately, are not qualified for them. And they'll say things like the average young person right now, let's, just bump into a conversation and, you have like 5 young people. Chances are they'll be talking about, if it's a male group, girls, football, girls some more, and gadgets, And, so not politics or things that are very serious, let's put it that way. But you seem to be blaming the educational system. How about the fact that young people are not exactly taking control of their lives? So does this play a role in that, or really they can't because they don't have the opportunity to?
Well, you have a point there. True, some young people are not they are not becoming responsible. The way the environment has changed over time, more young people are getting to a stage where they get married, they have to take up responsibilities, but they are still living like they are not responsible for their lives. So the truth of the matter is, yes, I believe that more and more young people need to start empowering themselves. So yes, the educational system may not be able to give you all that is required, but you need to also educate yourself, right? It's one thing to go to school, it's another thing to get an education. So there should be time for everything. So there might be time for you to watch soccer and do all of that, but when it comes to developing competence for where your life is headed, I think more and more young people need to do that. So there are different parties that you can blame. Yes, a lot of young people are pointing fingers at government and saying that government should do certain things for them. But the truth is, you also can take your life into your own hands and do certain things for yourself, right? Our system is structured in such a way that we don't really promote enterprise development. We don't promote employability. We don't promote people to start up their own businesses. People just want to come out and expect that a job will come their way. But the truth is, there are not so many jobs available. That's the reality. Our population is high relative to the amount of vacancies that exist. So we have a growing youth bulge, right? A large number of people need jobs. But the truth is, if people within that bracket don't begin to set up enterprises that will hire people from the coming generation, then we're going to have a serious issue to face with in the future, because you have so many people with a lot of energy who have nothing doing, and they have to divert that energy to something. So if they're not working, they might go into criminal acts and stuff like that. So I would still go back to the educational system, because this thing that I'm saying is some level of education, that we need to give to these people, where they recognize that they need to begin to take responsibility for their actions, you know, before they even come out of school.
All right, let's not forget Grant, who's hanging on Skype. Now, Grant, if you can hear me, I hope you are. Now, what do you think is the most pressing, you know, and difficult challenge that an average African youth faces today in today's world?
Well, I think the most difficult challenges, and my fellows, one of the most pressing things is mentioned is which testament to that. But I feel that young people also have a very access to quality education and care services. So youth unemployment and access to services. But I think more importantly, in trying to deal with youth unemployment, people just don't have the access to the opportunities to meaningfully participate in the economy, and to grow the businesses. So if you can create an environment for young people to set up their businesses and get them to be at a point where they're successful and contribute to participation on the continent, I think you go a long way in creating a dividend as opposed to an imminent disaster, I guess.
But wouldn't you say that, because some people claim that the young people of this generation have an entitlement mentality. So do this for me, create opportunities for me, help me get jobs, and they're not being pushed to go out and create those opportunities for themselves.
Well, look, I mean, the organization that I represent, which we adopted that young people be given access to resources to help with their own business. I believe that if there are young people out there who have the ideas necessary and are viable to create their own business interests and create their own employment, I don't see that as a sense of entitlement in asking somebody else to assist them. I think one of the biggest issues is trying to create an intergenerational synergy between people who are business leaders on the continent, people who are government leaders on the continent, and then the young people. I think somewhere along the line there's been some sort of miscommunication. And it's so important to recognize between young people that do have a sense of entitlement, and I do acknowledge that there are young people that do have a sense of entitlement, but I think in large parts, the people that we have worked with are people that genuinely have a passion for this continent. And I know that there are many people out there. So it's about saying to young people, okay, you have an idea, you want to impact on the economy somehow. Okay. What are the kinds of things that I can do to support your dream? And I think we have a collective effort as African people.
All right. Okay, at this point, we have to take a break now. But when we come back, the discussion continues, so don't go anywhere.
You know, you can't just continue to make statements, you know, and you cannot do anything.
I don't think we are
you can engage.
I don't think the two of us are in this same country.
I said something earlier. Let's not engage in demagogical diatribe.
Can you devote equal time, attention,
affection, love?
Yes, especially affection.
Yes.
To 3 women.
Sure. Wait.
That is where hypocrisy is.
You see, you have to come and learn from us.
The arrogancy of a governor to obey the judgment of Supreme Court cannot cause disorderliness in the society. It is an impeachable conduct, and such governors should be impeached.
Our network of bureaus awake 24/7 to bring you breaking news anywhere, anytime, any day. Impact.
TVC News through African eyes.
On April the 14th, more than 200 schoolgirls were abducted from their school in Chibok, Borno State, Nigeria. Most of them are still missing. TVC News joins their families and every concerned Nigerian in calling on the government and security agencies to do everything possible to rescue our girls.
There is God
no, Dad is gone, no, Dad is gone, no.
Bring back our girls.
Bring back our girls.
Bring back our girls.
Bring back our girls. Bring back our girls.
Bring back our girls.
Bring back our girls.
Welcome back. Now we've been discussing the African youth and leadership in, in the African context. Now earlier, Bankole, to sum up what you were saying, you're trying to say entrepreneurship is key to solving the youth unemployment crisis we have at the moment in Africa. But let's look away from the economy and other things like political participation. We don't really see, could be that the opportunity is not there, could be that the willingness is not there, or the ability is not there. But why exactly don't we see a lot of young people trying to get involved in the politics of the day?
Well, the truth be told, there are some young people that are interested in being a part of it. There are some young people interested in being a part of it, and the way certain people have not been informed as to how to go about the process. Some young people don't even take up the initiative to try to find out how they can be a part of the process. I hear a lot of young people complaining about, Africa, complaining about the status of things in their countries. But the truth is, how many of these people are a part of a political party? How many of them have even inquired as to how to join a political party, right? The truth is, there's a perception we all have. We all think that there's no room for a young person, to advance in that regard. But we all must start from somewhere. Before you become, the president, you have to be involved in one dimension of politics or the other. You have to, direct yourself, you have to take yourself in that direction. A number of young people talk about the problem, possibly have lost a bit of faith in their countries or in their continent, and have not taken the bold strides to do certain things about it, right? So I also think that from the direction of the government, right, we also need to involve young people in the political process, right? Even things as much as, enterprise development and the government being involved in empowering young people to do businesses shows that the government is interested in young people. And when you do that, more and more young people will gravitate towards politics. So I think, yes, there might be some people who are interested, true, but there are those who talk and agonize, and the truth is they are not even curious as to how to find, how to be involved in the politics of whatever country that they find themselves in.
All right. At this point, allow me to, say what our online communities are saying. Now, our very first tweet comes from Involve Youth, and it says, "You are agents of transformational change within their families, communities, schools, universities, organizations, and workplace." Yes, we are. And Ahmad Al-Handawi says, "They say that youths are the leaders of tomorrow, but are you really a leader of today?" Interesting. And Austin Geje says, "We need to be constantly reminded that a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor, so we must not be afraid of challenges." And Ignite to Youth says, "The youth have been described as an asset. Are we just tools for use and abuse?" Interesting question. And Irik Basia says, "We have to set the trends. African youths no more playing catch up." I agree. I strongly agree with that one. And Patrick says, "Charity is not just giving money. You can be charitable with your time, sharing expertise, life experiences, or simply guiding the youth." Now, I was having a conversation with the online communities earlier on, and there was something that one of the ladies said, and she said that she was due for a promotion, and she was actually considered, but they just didn't give her the promotion because they felt she was too young. I was very upset when she said that. Now, looking at you, Bankole, you're young, you're a youth, and it's impressive knowing the level of success you've amassed for yourself. Now, I'm sure that age must have been an issue. It's a funny stigma, but it is a big stigma, especially in this part of the world. Now, why do you think there's so much concentration on how old you are rather than how competent you are? Why?
Well, people would say it's the kind of culture we have in these parts. We believe that you have to work really hard for several years for you to have earned the right to be at the top.
Okay.
The truth is some people have compressed the period of time. In a short period, they've made significant advancements. If they have, they should be credited for it. So it's a culture that has been passed down, you know, where you have to accord, you know, sometimes more than necessary respect to somebody because he's way older than you, but in reality, he is not as competent. So that's changing gradually, right? Because, you know, there are certain organizations where the superior is way younger than, you know, the subordinates, right? So that you wouldn't have seen that a while back. So I think it's just the way of life that we need to change by, you know, with the influx of the Western culture and education. Some of that is changing, right? So in some organizations, you have things like, you know, you call people on a first name basis. So you don't say sir, you don't say Oga and, you know, call the person's name. You can call the MD by the first name. When we adopt more and more of cultures like this, people will become more open to the fact that competence is more important than just, you know, someone has exactly age.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you know, someone earlier on was talking today that, you know, African youths don't, you know, are not, you know, productive because they're not empowered. But there was something Ban Ki-moon said, and he said that youth all over the world, if you need to be empowered, then you need to equip and empower yourself. One will not give you a machinery when there is no tendency or prospect.
Yeah.
That means there has to be some level of, you know, self acquisition, self development, self growth. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you're saying true.
Yeah, I agree. I believe everybody has got, every young person has got to be bold enough to take the initiative to advance their lives. The government may be there to assist you, but, you know, don't just wait for what the government will do. What can you do?
At the end of the day,
Exactly.
you have to take charge of your life. At this point, I want to bring Grant in because we seem to have abandoned him for a while. Now, Grant, recently the United States sponsored about 500 young people across the continent for 6 weeks of leadership training and mentoring. It's being tagged as the Yali Charts, hashtag Yali Charts. We talked about that some weeks back in the program.
Summit,
Now, what do you make of this?
While I applaud the United States for creating a program like this, I think it's so important that we take action as African people to develop the program, and if not to certainly enhance the opportunities that young people have, be able to at least experience, develop leadership capacity. Because I think Bankole said earlier, my fellow speaker, that it's important for young people to also be bold and to take advantage of, to step up and take advantage of what offer. And I agree with him, because it's great that we have these programs, the Olympics, but what that eventually young people leave the continent to go for training. Yeah, the idea is that young people come back. But what about leadership institutes? Because we do have, where we train people. What happened to the African agent? What happened to creating opportunities for young Africans on the continent? Why should we always the continent?
Okay. All right, Grant. Now, let me also ask this. In Africa, funny enough, reports say that some of the poorest countries seem to have less unemployed youth than the better off countries. What do you make of this? How is that possible?
Possible?
Okay, reports say that some of the poorest countries seem to have less unemployed young people than countries in Africa that are better off. How is this possible, and why?
I think the biggest things to understand with the African economy is how our economy is structured. And if you look at what export of things and not necessarily as other kinds of industry, manufacturing, etc. But apart from that, it's important also to realize that some process is you have a population pyramid that is dominated by because our economic have not high enough in turn increasing population growth rate. We aren't able to provide the same kinds of jobs and young as other countries would have, for example, that have long-standing of democracy. Not as unequal to start off with as we have.
Okay. All right, Grant, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Grant. Now,
let's move on to solutions. But you wanted to...
Exactly. I was going to ask, in your opinion, what do you think is the best way, or the best thing you can do to invest in the life of an African child? Because it seems like, in the world we find ourselves today, education, even after providing a child with education, it seems not to be enough. Because there are youths out there who are educated, who are wasting away. And there are youths out there who are making an impact, who are relatively not necessarily educated. So what is the best thing you can give to an African child or African youth for life?
I'd say it's a mix of different things, actually.
Okay.
You mentioned one about education. The truth is, I think we have serious issues with our educational system. So yes, you're going to school, but that doesn't guarantee that you are going to be properly equipped to stand, to withstand what you would have to face on the outside. So a number of people go to school, they don't remember things with respect to their courses because it wasn't a practical experience for them, right? So we need to fix that. Education is a major issue. Yes, they're going to school, but what are they coming out with? What empowerment is going on there, right? The world has changed. It's, this is the period where young people are setting up enterprises. Our system is employment based. We don't train people to be deployed. We need to train people in school such that when they come out, they feel they need to take responsibility to be deployed into the market. So in certain parts of certain continents, for instance in Asia, the way they are trained is such that you come out and you want to set up a business. That's why Asians come to our continent, and then you see an average Asian who doesn't know so much about the continent, but he's setting up a business enterprise because his wiring, his conditioning, based on his exposure, is for business, whereas our wiring is for employment. Yeah. And the truth is
mass cheap labor.
Exactly, and there are not enough jobs for the people who are coming out. Okay. So I think it's a mix of different things. One other important thing is we all need to be more exposed.
All right.
We need more exposure for our children.
Let Grant also answer that same question. So Grant, in your opinion, what's that one thing that the African youth needs to be empowered? So how can we move forward from all the problems that we've laid on the table today?
Young people across the continent have continued to defy all odds and create some of the most amazing innovations. So for me, it wouldn't necessarily be educated. And slowly, on my experience, looking at the different regions that I've been to, young people, the ability and actually get their dream realized. I am a believer in the power of getting a young person to be able to sit down to somebody who they admire. There's a power in having a mentor.
Okay.
So give a young person, and it could be anybody.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Grant. Now,
I just have to, this just came in from our online community. 3 actually. Now from Austin it says, with little or no resources, we must continue with our solemn binding promise to expand the frontiers of human dignity. And I Am Will says, our fathers termed them, we termed our fathers the liberation generation. What will our children term us? And then finally, in Dereba says, until that time, the African youth will get angry with how their nations are being run and demand actions will remain to just be future leaders.
All right. And we can all agree that For Africa's sustained economic development, the youth must be actively involved in the continent's economy and state of affairs. We all agree with that. Let's go home with that and think about it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program. Thank you, Bankole. Thank you, Grant. It was lovely having you.
Thank you so much for coming.
And that's how far we can go today. But remember, the conversation continues online. So let's go online. Thank you.